So this is part two of The Elephant's Child. And you'll remember in part one, the elephant's child went to the banks of the great grey green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile has for breakfast. For dinner, I think it is. Anyway, you'll remember he's just discovered the crocodile. And the crocodile has said, "Come hither, little one." "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "and I'll whisper." Then the elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by his little nose, which up to that very week, day, hour, and minute had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful. "I think," said the crocodile, and he said it between his teeth like this, "I think today I will begin with elephant's child." At that, O best beloved, the elephant's child was much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose like this, "Let go, you Erdigby." And then the bicoloured python rock snake scuttled down from the bank and said, "My young friend, if you do not now immediately and instantly pull as hard as ever you can, it is my opinion that your acquaintance in the large patented leather ulster," and by this he meant the crocodile, "will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson." This is the way bicoloured python rock snakes always talk. And then the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch. And the crocodile floundered into the water and made it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail, and he pulled and pulled and pulled. And the elephant's child's nose kept on stretching, and the elephant's child spread all his four legs and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose kept on stretching, and the crocodile threshed his tail like an oar, and he pulled and pulled and pulled, and in each pull the elephant's child's nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him itches. And then the elephant's child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which is now nearly 5 feet long, "This is too much for me." And then the bicoloured python rock snake came down from the bank and knotted himself in a double clove hitch around the elephant's child's hind legs and said, "Rash and experienced traveller, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension, because if we do not, it is my impression that yonder self-propelled man of war with the armour-plated upper deck," and by this, O best beloved, he meant the crocodile, "will permanently victuallate your future career." That is the way all bicoloured python rock snakes always talk. And so he pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled, but the elephant's child and the bicoloured python rock snake pulled hardest. And here's a drawing of the elephant's child and the bicoloured python rock snake pulling and pulling and pulling. This is the elephant's child having his nose pulled by the crocodile. He is much surprised and astonished and hurt, and he's talking through his nose and saying, "Let go, you Erdigby," and he's pulling very hard, and so is the crocodile, but the bicoloured python rock snake is hurrying through the water to help the elephant's child. All that black stuff is the banks of the great grey green greasy Limpopo River, but I'm not allowed to paint these pictures. And the bodley tree with the twisty roots and the 8 leaves is one of the fever trees that grow there. And underneath the picture are shadows of African animals walking into an African ark. There are 2 lions and 2 ostriches and 2 oxen and 2 camels and 2 sheep and 2 other things that look like rats, but I think they are rock rabbits. They don't mean anything, but I put them in because I thought they looked pretty, and they look very fine if I was allowed to paint them. And there they are at the bottom of the drawing. So back to the story. And at last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose with a plop that you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. And then the elephant's child sat down most hard and sudden. But first he was careful to say thank you to the bicoloured python rock snake. And the next he was kind to his poor pulled nose, and he wrapped it all up in cool banana leaves and hung it in the great grey green greasy Limpopo to cool. What are you doing that for? Said the bicoloured python rock snake. Excuse me, said the elephant's child, but my nose is badly out of shape and I'm waiting for it to shrink. Then you will have to wait a long time, said the bicoloured python rock snake. Some people do not know what's good for them. And the elephant's child sat there for 3 days waiting for his nose to shrink, but it never grew any shorter, and besides it made him squint. For, oh best beloved, you'll see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it out into a really truly trunk, same as all elephants have today. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder, and before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit the fly dead with the end of it. Vantage number 1, said the bicoloured python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now. And before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk and plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his forelegs, and stuffed it into his own mouth. Vantage number 2, said the bicoloured python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Do you think the sun is very hot here? It is, said the elephant's child. And before he thought what he was doing, he scooped up a scoop of mud from the banks of the great grey green greasy Limpopo and slapped it on his head, where it made a cool, sloopy, sloshy mud cap all trickly behind his ears. Vantage number 3, said the bicoloured python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now how do you feel about being spanked again? Excuse me, said the elephant's child, but I should not like it at all. How would you like to spank somebody? Said the bicoloured python rock snake. I should like it very much indeed, said the elephant's child. Well, said the bicoloured python rock snake, you will find that new nose of yours very useful to spank people with. Thank you, said the elephant's child. I'll remember that, and now I think I'll go home to all my dear families and try.